everyone, I'm Raine. Welcome back to my channel, and today I'm doing my February wrap-up. So I feel like I seriously kicked some ass in February. Like, I read 9 books. I did so good. I'm so proud of myself. I was not expecting to read that many, and I actually ended up enjoying majority of what I read this month too. So yeah, let's get into it. The first book that I ended up finishing in February was Needful Things by Stephen King. And yes, I know this book took me months to finish, but I finally finished it in the beginning of February, and I have to say I did really enjoy it, even though it took me a really long time to finish it. So this story is basically set in Stephen King's famous fictional town of Castle Rock. And one day in town, this shop opens up, and it's run by this really peculiar old man named Leland Gaunt. And people start coming by to check the place out, and they realize basically Gaunt has any material item that their heart most desires, and just for pennies to the dollar, for basically nothing, you can get the one thing that you've desired the most. However, along with your pocket change or whatever, you will have to play a trick on someone in the town. There are already minor disputes going on within this town, and these little pranks basically get blamed on other people in the town, and chaos ensues. It's really interesting. It's just such an interesting premise. The only issue I really did have was just the overabundance of characters. There is a scene at the very end where there's just some chaos happening, and while this is happening, there are a lot of different names thrown around of characters, and I really didn't know who was who and what was going on. And that could be because it took me so long to read it. I did feel like some of the characters could have been fleshed out. I did like Leland Gaunt. I thought that he was super eerie and creepy. I also very much enjoyed Alan Pangborn and Polly Chalmers. I thought that their romance was super sweet, and that's one thing I feel like King does very well, is he can write a really good romance without having a lot of the lovey-dovey, touchy-feely stuff. It's more like an emotional connection. Not a lot of physical acts of love happening in his books. However, these characters clearly care about each other, and it's very believable in that sense. I much enjoy his character work. I think that he can definitely write a very good protagonist and a very good antagonist, because you really either root for or you really hate these characters, and I think he just writes them so well. Yeah, definitely 4 stars. I would highly recommend it. The next book I ended up finishing in February was The Immortal List by Chloe Benjamin, and this one I listened to on audiobook. Basically, we follow these 4 siblings who go to the psychic and find out the date of their death. After they find that out, we are following each sibling and how they are affected by this knowledge, and it's super interesting. I thought the concept was really cool. The execution just didn't do it for me. I only gave it 3 stars. I thought it was okay. I can see why people really enjoy this one. It does really dive into some heavier topics, sexuality and mental illness and grief. So I do see why people love it for that reason, but it just missed the mark for me. I didn't really feel anything as far as the characters and the emotional things that were going on. I would normally be affected by a lot of the things that happen. However, with this one, I didn't. And I don't know if that's because we don't get enough backstory on these characters or the way that it's written. I'm not really sure what did it for me. Someone else could easily get enjoyment out of this that I didn't get. But yeah, that's basically why I gave it 3 stars, because I did really appreciate the diversity, and I did appreciate the message it was trying to convey. It didn't work for me, but it might work for someone else. The next book I ended up finishing was Never Have I Ever by Jocelyn Jackson. This is a mystery thriller novel. We're following Amy. She is in this book club in her neighborhood, and this woman, Rue, shows up, and she just kind of takes over, and she's just mysterious and really pretty, and it just kind of throws Amy for a loop. Well, she starts this game called Never Have I Ever, and it's not like the Never Have I Ever that you've probably played. This is a little different. Like, it's basically telling the group, like, what's the worst thing you did today? And then it goes on to what's the worst thing that you did this week. So Amy feels really put off by this game because she has some secrets and she feels like maybe Rue knows about her secrets, and basically things kind of go from there. And yeah, so you really shouldn't know a whole lot going in anyway because it's a mystery thriller, but I loved this. I ate this up. It was so good. I ended up giving it 4.5 stars. It just had me from the start. I'll read to you like the first few sentences and like maybe it'll get your attention, but it totally got mine. And so here it goes. The game was Rue's idea, more than an idea, a plan. She made it up herself, this shotgun of a game. She packed it tight with salt and metal, counting on collateral damage too. But she aimed it straight at me. She said it was like Never Have I Ever, but not any version I'd ever played. It began innocently enough, with everyone confessing the worst thing they'd done that day. Like, oh, it caught me right then. The writing was just done so very beautifully. I feel like for a mystery thriller, I'm not super picky about writing, and I don't really read a lot of mystery thrillers that are just beautifully written. And I just really like the way that this was written. It was written almost poetically, and I really loved it. It was so cleverly done. Really have barely any qualms about it. I think the only reason I didn't give it 5 stars was it almost got repetitive at some point, but as far as the story itself and the characters and everything, like, I thought it was just done so well and so unique and clever, and just, it was really good. There were parts where I thought I knew what was going to happen, and then like in those next few pages, Amy would come to that conclusion herself and basically like shoot down any chance you had of like knowing what was going on. And I loved that about this book because so often that does not happen, and so often you're kind of yelling at your main character like, why don't you know this, or why don't you think of this? And this was very well thought out. I thought it was just done so well, and I'm very happy to say that I read it because I loved it that much. And yeah, 4.5 stars. The next book I ended up picking up was My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix. I picked this one up as part of a flash read-along that Natalie at Bluebird put together on Instagram. I'll link her bookstagram down below. She's super sweet, and she put this together. I was really excited about it because I had the book and I've been kind of wanting to read it, and it just really put me in the mood because I love talking to other people about the books I'm reading. So we had a great time in the group chat, and it was great, and I love doing those read-alongs. Like, anytime I see one that looks interesting to me, or it's a book that I have, like, I hop right on them because they're just so much fun. This is a coming-of-age / horror novel where we're following Abby, and her best friend Gretchen ends up getting possessed, and things just get pretty wild. Abby gets kind of excommunicated from her friends, and it gets really emotional at times. Like, you see Gretchen and Abby's friendship kind of blossom, and then towards the end, like, things just start going downhill once she has been possessed and everything, and it just kind of breaks your heart, and it also kind of creeps you out at the same time because there's some really spooky shit going on. So it's a good time. I really loved it. It was 4.5 stars for me easily. I had such a great time. All of the chapter headers were different, like hit songs from the 80s, so you kind of get them stuck in your head. It just had a very nostalgic feel, and it's kind of funny for me to say that because I was born in 89. I was nowhere really alive during the 80s, but I still really felt nostalgic while reading this, and I just thought it was done so well. I read Horror Store by Grady Hendrix like a few years ago, and I loved it, but I didn't really love it as much as I loved this. And I would really like to try out more of his works, because he kind of does these like horror parody type deals, and they're always so cool, and he does them very, very well. And I had a good time with this one. I was so happy to join in on the read along and have some fun with everyone else. If you do decide to read this, not only is the paperback version just freaking fantastic, and I have to get it because it just looks so awesome, but the ebook actually has some images in it that the physical copies don't have, and they're pretty kick-ass images too. So I don't know, it's really up to you. If you do like ebooks, I would definitely suggest checking out this ebook because of all the cool images, and you don't get those in the physical. So that's just something you find out when you do these group chats and these read-alongs, people. Like, this is what it's for. It's, you know, to find this information out and just to have a good time with some other people who are reading the same book as you. So yeah, I gave it 4.5 stars. It was so great, and I can't wait to read more Hendrix in the future. The next book I ended up picking up was Three Dark Crowns by Kendar Blake, and this is a YA fantasy. I listened to it on audiobook, and basically it follows these triplets who are separated at a very young age, and when they turn 16, they are to basically fight it out so that one of them could be queen. And the one who survives in the end is the one who becomes queen. And they all kind of have their own different types of powers. So one is a poisoner, the other is a naturalist, and the final one is a elemental. And basically this one was okay. I ended up giving it 3.5 stars because I did enjoy most of it. There were some parts where I was just kind of bored. The romances weren't very believable to me, and I don't know if it's because it's YA. As far as the story itself, though, I really did enjoy a lot of it, and I enjoyed what was happening. I really liked the one sister, the naturalist, whose friend has a cat as her familiar, and it's like a mountain cat. And the mountain cat was like really cool, and I just loved it. And yeah, but other than that, like, I did really like the darkness of it, like, I guess. And it did have a plot twist at the end that I kind of saw coming, like I saw it going that way. But I was pleasantly surprised that it did go that way, because if it would have went any other way, I think I wouldn't have liked it as much. I'm curious to know whether or not I should continue, because I have heard that the second book is much better. But it takes a lot for me to really want to continue with the series, to really dedicate my time to a series. And if it's a 3.5, I'm kind of on the fence. So we'll see. I don't know. Let me know down below if you've read more in this series and you think that I should read it. Maybe you can convince me to pick it up. I don't know. We'll see. I've heard good things about the second book, but I don't know. I don't know where I'm at, if I want to read it or not. The next one I ended up picking up was The Girl from the Other Side, Volume 2, and this is a manga that I very much enjoy. It's kind of like a dark fairy tale. We are following Teacher, and he is taking care of Shiva, and we don't really know why he's protecting her. All we really know about this world is basically people have quarantined themselves away because they are afraid of these demon creatures. If they touch one, if they are touched by one, they become one. And for some reason, this little girl's kind of cast out on the outside, and we're not exactly sure why she's on the outside. We're getting little bits of the story as we go along. I'm still very much enjoying this series. I still don't know a whole lot about what's happening, but I did very much love this one. Not as much as the first one. I do feel like this one has its flaws. I did rate this one 4 out of 5 stars because there are some scenes where the art style, because it's very dark, it has a very dark art style, are times where you don't know what character's saying what. For that reason, I gave it 4 stars, but I'm very excited to go ahead and try out more books in this series to find out what's happening. And I would definitely like to pick up some more manga. So if you have any suggestions for me, let me know down below, because yeah, I want to really try out some more manga this year. The next book that I picked up was The Unhiding Mooners by Christina Lauren. I read this one on audiobook. It is an adult contemporary romance. It's a lot of fun. I really liked this. I was pleasantly surprised. I am not a romance reader, but I had a good time with it. This basically follows Olive, whose twin sister just got married, and during the wedding, everyone gets sick. Everyone gets food poisoning except for Olive and her sister's new husband's brother, Ethan. And Olive and Ethan do not really like each other. Basically, her sister had won this amazing vacation for her honeymoon, and she can't go because she's sick, and so is her groom. So she gives Olive and Ethan her trip. This is a whole hate to love thing going on, and it was just so good. I really, really liked it. I gave it 4.5 stars as well. I thought the banter between the two main characters was just great, and I found the romance believable. I liked the whole setting. I think this would be a lot of fun during the summer. It would make just a great summer beach read. It is funny and cute, and like it's the perfect rom-com. I think it's a good time. I definitely like to read more Christina Lauren. I know I have one of her books that I put on my TBR. I haven't read it yet, and I think I'm more excited to get to that one now. The next book I picked up was Perfume by Patrick Süskind, and this is basically like an 18th century tale where we follow a man who is born with this extraordinary sense of smell. He doesn't have a scent of his own, and this makes him want to create the perfect scent, an angelic scent, and to do so, he starts to kill young women so that he can extract their scent. Basically, this is a really slow burn gothic horror tale. It is written so beautifully, and I think it's fantastic. I gave it 5 stars. It takes a special type of writer, I feel like, to be able to encapsulate scent into a book and into pages, and it was just done so well here. If you're looking for something that's more like on the thriller end, that's going to have a lot going on plot-wise, then this probably isn't for you. We follow Jean-Baptiste after he is born. His mother is executed because she basically tries to kill him right after he's born. And we follow him as he's kind of passed around to all these different people because he doesn't have a scent, and people are kind of freaked out by it, and they think that he's the Antichrist. And pretty much after that, he's kind of exploring this special sense of smell that he has. He eventually apprentices at a perfumery, kind of learns the art of mixing different scents and how to extract scents from different things. I think it was just exquisite. I loved the writing. I loved the story. I loved the ending. It was really like slap in your face, like what the hell just happened type of ending. And I just couldn't get enough of it. I think that it was just so beautifully done. It's definitely written older to me. It was published in like 86, and to me it was written more like a classic. It has a classic feel to it. It's slower paced. None of the killing actually starts happening until basically the last 50 pages, and you don't get a whole lot of detail or anything like that. It explores the power of scent and how scent can affect people and how it can be used to manipulate people. And it's just, I can't even talk because I just loved it so much. But yeah, 5 stars. I felt like this was just phenomenal. I loved the writing. I loved everything about it. And I have a new favorite. And the last book that I picked up in February was The Phantom Prince by Elizabeth Kendall. And this is a book that I buddy read with my best friend. This is a true crime novel written by Elizabeth Kendall, who was Ted Bundy's longtime girlfriend, and it's basically about their relationship and her coming to terms with him being a serial killer. She had multiple times tried to turn him in, and how she felt about that, how that affected her, because she wasn't really sure if he was the one murdering all these women or not, but she had these gut feelings. And yeah, so it was super interesting. I really liked this. It showed a very different side of Ted Bundy, because you kind of just get all the facts with other books, and with this one you really get a glimpse into like what he may have been as a person, and just how he was able to manipulate people, and just how he was so charming, and the stuff he used to say to Elizabeth that just kind of like had her like, oh, you know, like it was just so fascinating. This was just a very interesting look into Bundy, and it doesn't really dive into a lot of the murders themselves or the victims. It goes over them very briefly, but if you wanted like an in-depth look, I would definitely suggest The Stranger Beside Me. That one is fantastic. Yeah, if you wanted just like a different look at Bundy, I would definitely suggest this one. It was really, really interesting. I like tabbed it up, all my little tabs. That's all the stuff I found interesting. So I definitely enjoyed this one. I gave it 4 stars. I would definitely recommend it. But yeah, that's about it. That's everything that I read in February, and I'm just hoping that I kick as much ass in March as well. Let me know down below if you've read any of these, or if you plan to, or what you read in February yourself. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.